Hi, my name is Rodderick Jefferson. I'm the CEO of Rodderick Jefferson and Associates. Today, I want to talk to you about the 7 steps required to build a world-class sales enablement onboarding program. But before I get started, I want to actually answer the obvious question that I would be asking, and that is, who is this guy and why should I even listen to him? So first of all, I'm part of a community of practitioners, and I started out as a salesperson. That's right, bag-carrying salesperson that moved into a role of sales enablement about 25 years ago. So I'm one of the founding members of the Sales Enablement Society. And most importantly, I was designated in 2015 by Serious Decisions as having the Sales Enablement Onboarding Program of the Year. Now, where have I done this? There's a couple of nice logos on there, but the most important part that comes out of this for you is I am willing to share all of my best practices and my secrets. So let's get started. First and foremost, let's talk about what sales enablement really does. And I believe there are 3 components. The first is around ramp up. It's the communication piece. It's what's it take to get folks onboarded successfully, get them up and running, and get them to that all-important first close sale. The next piece is around collaboration. For me, that means including all of the legacy sales folks and making sure that we don't lose any of that tribal knowledge as we're building our programs. And finally, it's around orchestration. It's really about being able to be the hub that spokes out to every other part of the organization. I call us the translators of dialects and languages. And what that means is I don't expect all of those other organizations and lines of business to speak sales because that's our job. It's to make sure that we can take their information, take their content, synthesize it, and then morph it into sales language. Step 2, it's all about partnering with sales to make sure that we put that blueprint of success together. Now, what does that include? Well, we've talked about the purpose already, what in sales enablement is, what we do, and what success looks like. Next, let's talk about the people. It's not just about who's who in the zoo. It's really about building your personal internal partner ecosystem and making sure that you're connected to the right people at the right time to make sure that we can help create more selling time for our sellers. And finally, it's about programs, and I mean programs from onboarding through accreditation, certifications, all the way out to continuing education. And then the most important piece, in my opinion, is the change management piece. Where does all this sit? Well, it sits on a number of platforms, systems, and tools. We'll talk about those in just a bit. Now, everyone talks about sales methodology. I believe that they are critical, and there are a number of them, and they're all very good. What it comes down to is really finding the methodology that fits with your go-to-market strategy and that is aligned to the all-important customer buying cycle. We all talk about sales process. We talk about sales stages. We talk about sales methodology. I want to change that narrative. Let's start talking about how all of these will fit into the stages of your buyer cycle, because without your buyers, we're all dead in the water. Now, part 2 of the methodology is really how does it fit into your company and your go-to-market strategy? Well, if you've got a volume velocity sell, it's going to be very different than if your company is a large enterprise sale. So pick the methodology that fits with your go-to-market strategy that ultimately aligns to your customer's buying cycle. And when you do that, we get to step 4 and we start to cultivate what I call a culture of learning. I broke it into 4 phases. The first phase is basically the what is. That's making sure that you get all of your company onboarding piece, your general information around the company, what you do, how you service your customers, etc. The next piece is making sure that then you take that content and put it into information, small chunks that can then be digested and you can validate with quizzes and accreditations. The next is that important boot camp. This should be the how-to. Now that you've established that baseline of what is in the pre-work, how to position key differentiation, competitive advantage, and business value. I'll get a little deeper into that in just a moment. The third piece is that deep dive. There are 2 components. One is the actual practical application of what your learners have taken on and have actually digested in those first 2 phases. And then there's another piece, and that's there are some things that just don't fit into boot camp. It's too early in their learning cycle. And there are other things that require a deeper dive. Here's where that deeper dive comes in. And then finally, phase 4. That's role mastery. You're talking about accreditations, certifications, making sure that you incorporate soft skills. And then, of course, that product and domain expertise. That is the sharpening of the sword that continues to happen over and over and over. Talk about boot camp. I break boot camp into 4 days. And the first is all around that business value, understanding your value prop, your ICP, your profiles around your personas. That next day is how do you differentiate in the market from your competitors? Day 3 is all around building your, again, personal, internal partner ecosystem. That's your methodology. That's who's going to help you to move the sales forward. How are you going to do it? What's included and what are the processes around that? And then, of course, the all-important role breakouts, because what's too technical for one is not technical enough for another audience. So let's make sure we can get those together when it fits. And then it's also imperative that we have some breakouts. And then finally, that day 4 is all about presentation. It's taking that case study and making sure it's validated. It's about including your sales leaders as your judges for the case study. And then finally, it's all about putting it together in also being able to talk about what's happening next. What can they expect once this case study is done and they get out in the real world? Because there have been too many times where I've seen there are programs where phenomenal boot camp, and then once you're done, nothing happens from there. My philosophy is that enablement is an ongoing occurrence. It's not a single event. So we've got to make sure that we continue to push that as they grow as sellers. We are ahead of that curve. We're driving with innovation because that's expected of us. Step 6, we've got to have a centralized communication strategy. That includes a content management system. It includes an event calendar, an annual calendar that is. It includes some form of learning management system to make sure that all of the learners' records are in a single location and easy to touch. It includes reinforcement calls because we are continually sharpening that sword. It also includes coaching tools. This is where we involve the first line managers. In my opinion, the rubber really meets the road right there with that FLM. We can give them the best products. We can give them the best solutions. We can give them the best tools and processes and programs. Without them owning, and I stress, without them owning the adoption and execution, it goes nowhere. And finally, some form of podcast library. As you know, our learners are getting younger and younger, so it's important that we bring in tools and we go to where and how they learn. This also ensures that all of your content is updated, it's in small, digestible knowledge chunks, and that everything is mobile. Metrics. Oh, this is the fun part. I believe there are 2 phases of metrics. One that's influenced by enablement, and that's things like attach rates, that's pipeline created. These are things that we're helping to develop and or putting in consistent tools and programs to make sure that we're driving it. Then there are pieces that we own. That's the ongoing surveys, that's the post-training information, that's the needs analysis, that's ensuring that we're sharing feedback. Without one or the other, I don't believe that you are truly running a holistic and a world-class program because you're missing out on some form of feedback. So make sure that you're looking at both sides of the coin. One, where we're helping to influence, and the other side of that coin, where we're actually owning those metrics. Now that we've talked about these 7 pieces, I want to make sure that I can leave you with some walkaways that you can actually go put into practical application right away. First and foremost is, as I said earlier, focus on that buyer's journey. Too much we internalize. We focus on inside of the house. What are our sales tools, our processes, our programs, our sales stages, our sales methodology? Let's get out of that and let's reverse that. Let's go back to what is ultimately important. And that is, how does our solutions from a given company fit into the overall buyer's journey? Next is, make sure you're up-leveling your messaging and that you're talking at the C-suite. These are the folks that are going to make the decisions. These are the folks that are going to have signing authority. So why would we start lower? It's easier to start high and move down because let's go to the old adage. What's important to my manager is imperative to me. Next is making sure that you keep an open mind. I'll tell you right now, the only thing that is constant when you're building a program like this is change. Make sure that it's iterative. Make sure that you're getting feedback. Make sure that you're encompassing all of the various lines of business as this is not only being built, but once it's built, that you go back and make sure that you get their feedback, get their input, and show that they're an important part of the process. Next is, you have the tools, you're rolling them out, you need to own the tools. Let me repeat that, own the tools. Because again, our stakeholders, our customers internally and externally, for those of you that are running partner enablement, are expecting us to lead with innovation. So those tools have to be sharpened. Make sure that you're reaching out to your peers and making sure that you're collaborating with other folks inside of the sales enablement space, because you never know what you're going to learn. Things are changing all the time. Technology is swiftly moving. It's important that we stay ahead of that curve. Next is that we embrace this culture of learning. And that would be those 7 steps that I gave earlier to make sure that, one, they're systematic. Secondly, they're consistent, and that they are scalable and constantly being iterated. Next is, don't be afraid to ask for feedback early and often. It's important that we're not only putting information out, but that we are taking that feedback in. We're showing our stakeholders that their feedback matters, their input is important to us, and that we're making changes based upon that input. Here's one of my favorites. I believe that we can do anything. We just can't do everything. I need you to make sure that you have your quarterly, your monthly, your annual goals and objectives are written out, and that you are constantly going back and bouncing off and getting kind of a pulse check, if you will, as to where you are against those goals. And finally, it is a journey. This is a marathon. It is in no way a sprint. Take your time, make sure that you're being, again, sequential, you're being methodical, you're working through this and building out programs, processes, and tools that are going to be scalable, consistent, and repeatable. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. If you'd like to learn more about things that I've shared, you want to share some things with me, feel free to reach out. Here's all of our social info. Thank you very much, and have a fantastic day.